Happy New Year and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. The best video of the year on the first day of the year is probably the best books of the previous year. So today I'm going to be talking about my 10 favourite books from 2025. We will be starting with 5 highly recommended that haven't made the top 10 list. But yeah, as I say at the beginning of these videos, every single year, on any other day, they could have been in any other order, but today is the day that I'm filming it, and this is the order. So what I will say is that out of the 10 books, this is a real testament to how much I've used the library this year, because I only have 3 here with me. Ordinarily, I have a stack of 10 maybe, but I've been really, really good with using the library this year, which has been aided by the fact that I volunteer at my library, and I now get free reservations. Hello. But yeah. The message at the top of this video is use your libraries, guys. Use your libraries. So let's start with the 5 highly recommended I've got, which I'm not going to go into details about. I'm simply going to list them for you, and then we'll move into the top 10, and I will talk in some detail about how much I have had a lovely reading year this year, because I have had a lovely reading year this year. So the highly recommended. The first one is a series of books. It's the Girls in Love series by Jacqueline Wilson. So I reread that whole series this year. Then we've got The Hidden Life of Trees, a graphic adaptation by Fred Bernard and Peter Woolison. Then Half-Arsed Human by Lena Norms. Then 1,000 Threads, a memoir by Naina Cherry. And lastly, No Place Like Home, Family, Food and Finding Your Place by Charlene White. So those are my 5 highly recommended. And now we move on to the top 10. So if we start at 10 and move our way down. The first one I'm going to start with is When Gavin Met Stacey and Everything in Between by Ruth Jones and James Corden. I listened to the audiobook of this. I actually probably listened to this twice because I listened to the audiobook of it. I knew I really wanted to listen to it, and then David listened to the audiobook of it almost straight after I did. When we were in car journeys and stuff, I'd be like, do you mind sticking on your Gavin and Stacy book so I can listen to it? Gavin and Stacy, for those who don't know, is a comedy series here in the UK. There's 3 series and 3 Christmas specials. Most recently, the last Christmas special, which was the finale, was shown in Christmas 2024 and sort of wrapped it all up beautifully. They did an amazing job. James Corden and Ruth Jones have really embodied, and well, they played the characters in this series, and it's been a joy to sort of follow Gavin and Stacey the whole way through. And if you are a fan of anything, like I've said this many times, then please seek out accompanying books and companion books that go with those things, because you will just have a lovely time with them. What I really loved about this, and I listened to the audio of it, is that there was additional information, sort of backstage bits, and you were also hearing some of the scenes that they're talking about. You hear that they play them to you. There's a bit at the end where all of the cast talk about their big moments from Gavin and Stacey and how much it's changed their lives. I really loved hearing about the production of it, all the way from the conception of the idea, how Ruth and James met, the casting, how they came up with it, the people they really wanted. And it's just a great sort of companion to a series that I already love. And yeah, having listened to it. And another thing I really enjoyed hearing about was James and Ruth's friendship, and how honest they are in this about their friendship, and how their friendship hasn't always been plain sailing. They have a lot of love for each other, and I was sort of crying along with them when they're talking about their love for one another, and laughing along with them when they're talking about situations that they've got themselves in over the years and things like that. This was just a great joy, and yeah, if I can use it as a representative, but if you're a fan of a TV program or a film or something like that, and there's companion stuff, go ahead and get it, because you will be enjoyed. I will listen to this again and again and again. I really truly think I will. Number 9 is Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan, and I went to go for it there because I thought I had this here, but I don't have it with me. This was on the long list, maybe the short list, of the Women's Prize for fiction last year, and I remember watching a video where Simon was talking about his favourite books from 2024, and this was on it, and I just don't know how it passed me by the first time round, because I had an amazing time reading this. It's a real slip of a thing, like less than 200 pages, and you're following a sort of they're described as like a less than desirable Irish family who are living on a housing estate, and on that housing estate there has been the death of a child, and as eyes look to how this death of this child may have come about, eyes turn to this Irish family, and at the same time a journalist has whisked this family away and is sort of feeding them up on fags and booze and new clothes and taking them to a pub and keeping them in a hotel where they're sort of safe and away from the prying eye of other people. And he's finding out about their background, and you're listening to stories about how their lives have ended up on this housing estate and what they've been through up until that point. And all the time you're sitting with this feeling of, what if the very worst has happened, and what if this family are involved in the death of this child? And it's just a monumental thing that Megan Nolan has pulled together in a really small amount of pages. And yeah, a real page turner, a real gripper. And I feel like that's something that you don't often get in the Women's Prize for fiction. Like, often they're nice sort of beautiful writing that you can languish in and stuff like this, but this was both of those things, like amazing writing and really plotty and really involved, and I just couldn't put it down, and I think about it often. So yeah, this was a read at the beginning of the year, and I had a really good January and February in terms of like the books that I was reading. So I'm delighted I got round to it eventually. Then I've got one that I do have, The Centre by Aisha Manazir Siddiqui. I read this in January as well this year, and this is a story about Anissa, who has a longing to become a translator, and she is in a relationship with a guy, and she finds out that he has become fluent in, I think it might be German, very suddenly. Now, she asks him about this, and he tells her that he has gone to this place called the Centre, and he is able to become fluent in the language, but at what cost? And you find out about the cost as you read more about this book, and you find out about Anissa's life at the Centre, and she sort of befriends somebody who's working behind the scenes, and therefore she gets to see a little bit more than other people who have been there. And as sort of things unfurl, there is just so many shocking moments. And the big shocking moment, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that is what has been happening here. Very plotty, very page turny, and yeah, I couldn't put it down, and I think about it all the time, and I think this front cover is very telling and very enjoyable in terms of the book. So yeah, highly enjoyed that. Then the next one, number 7, I also have the book of, and that's Fundamentally by Nusaybah Yunus. Now, this was on the Women's Prize for fiction long list and shortlist this year, and this is another one where this is such a feat, because this book is about radicalisation and ISIS wives and potentially de-radicalisation. It's about corruption within the UN, and yet it is funny, it is dark, it is witty, it is sharp. It's got relatable characters in a place where I didn't think I would find relatable characters. And we read this for Patreon Book Club, and whilst not everybody got on with it, we had an amazing discussion about it, and it is a real thinker. It opens where you are finding out that the main character that you're following, who has been sort of brought in to work for the UN and to work with these radicalised ISIS wives, and one of the radicalised ISIS wives are escaping from a place. So you know that we're building up to this escape. But then what happens after the escape, and the hope you feel for these characters, and has this worked, and is this going to happen for them, and that all coming together. Yeah, it's a whole roller coaster the whole time you're in it. I would have liked this to have won. And yeah, it's a shame that it didn't, but yeah, it was a really great read. This is probably out in paperback now, so you should get it in paperback and read it, because it was really great. I really like, and like I said, finding relatable characters in a place where I did not expect to find relatable characters is a real joy. And yeah, what a piece of work, what a piece. Next up, I've got a book that I have only just finished, literally a couple of days ago, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And as I was reading it, I mean, you're readers, you understand, but when you're reading something and you're like, you are getting tingly little tickles from reading this book, knowing that it is great. And that is On the Calculation of Volume 1 by Solveig Bally, which is translated from the Danish by Barbara J. Havland. This is a book that I've seen kicking around on BookTube a bit. It is eventually, I think, going to be 8 books. I've already put a reservation on book 2 from the library, and that is on its way to me, so excited about that. But you are following a character who is reliving the 18th of November again and again and again. And in this volume 1, you follow her reliving the 18th of November again and again and again for the period of 365 days, aka a year. And her and her partner live in France, and they are book dealers dealing in sort of like antique books and things like that. And she wakes up on this first 18th of November on a business trip to Paris as she is buying books. And then very quickly she realises that she is reliving the same day, and she makes her way back home and then spends some time at home. What I found amazing. was that she told her partner that she was reliving these days every day, and he was just so accepting of it. I said to David, if I told you I was reliving a particular day every day, would you believe me? And he was like, yeah, I think I would. So I thought, well, there we go. And yeah, and it's this sort of, the thrill of monotony, which is going to come up again in another book, my favourite book, that I didn't realise that I loved so much in books. So reading about that day over and over again, and the things that happened over and over again, particularly when she sort of gets into a rhythm of her life, and then also feeling her sort of unfurling, because of course you're going to go mad while this sort of thing is happening, and her trying to grab onto her thoughts and knowing that this distance between her and her husband, and how when she was on the 14th version of the 18th of November, it felt more acceptable to say to her husband, I'm living the 14th day of the 18th of November, as opposed to the 180th version of the 18th of November. Very, very clever. Read it in a whole day, couldn't put it down. Can't wait to see where it's going. If there's 8 books of this, then I imagine she ain't getting out of that 18th of November anytime soon. But I have read the blurb of the second one, and I'm not going to say it here because it will give things away. But yeah, it looks as though the second volume of this book, on the calculation of volume 2, is going to take us in new places for a very sort of restrictive, potentially, plot device. This feels amazing. So yeah, unusual, isn't it, for me to include a book that I've read so recently, but yeah, it's been amazing, and I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of them next year. Oh, maybe I won't be reading the rest of them. I think maybe only 4 are out at the moment, so maybe I won't be reading all of them next year, but I'll certainly be reading as many that are out. Next up is The Book of Guilt by Catherine Chidgey. It's lovely to have a Catherine Chidgey book on the list again. This happens quite often. But this book, again, I can't really tell you much about the plot because it's a really original, great idea that I did not see coming. But Catherine Chidgey's writing is fantastic, and I always feel like I'm in good hands when I'm reading a book by Catherine Chidgey. She writes great characters, the plot is amazing, the way things unfurl, and particularly the way things unfurl in this book, are great. You're hearing it from 3 different points of view, and one of the points of view, which is the opening point of view, is you're hearing from a young boy living in a care home, and what that experience is like for him, and the fact that he is unwell and he's having to take tablets to keep himself well, and he has brothers within that care home, and he has people that look after him. And as you're reading more and more, you're thinking, oh, things don't feel quite right here, something isn't right here. And then that mixed in with the other 2 perspectives that you're hearing from an MP and from a girl who's living at home with her parents and is living a very remote and isolated life. You start thinking, is this what's happening here? Is this that's weird, but could this be that? And I really loved the unfurling of it, and how you were sort of learning things maybe a little bit ahead of other characters, and then you'd learn something else, and then you think, oh, maybe I've got that wrong. Like, the whole construction of it was fantastic, and I really, really had a great time reading this. Yeah, that's all I can say. But read it, please. Really, really enjoyed it. Next up was North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, which I read when I was in the throes of a sickness that I picked up when I went on a cruise with my husband for his 40th birthdays. We read this for Patreon Book Club, and the theme for that month, was it classics? Yes, it was classics. We said we wanted to read a classic, and the theme was classics with themes of class, so this was the one that won. Now, I had studied this, imagine this, I had studied this when I was in 6th form doing my A-levels in a comparison with Hard Times by Charles Dickens. However, I never read this when I was doing my comparison with Hard Times. How awful is that? I mean, I still did quite well in my exam, I got a B. But yeah, so so I knew the themes that were coming up in here because I'd studied it as a teenager, but I hadn't actually read it. Very bad of me. But I had a wonderful time with this. This is a really, really plotty classic, and considering it's like over 600 pages long, I never at any time felt bored, and I was very unwell when I was reading this as well, so this kept me really sort of gently entertained. I loved the main characters, I loved the sort of side dramas that were going on, I loved the setting, I loved the way We had characters sort of popping all over the place. Margaret Hale herself, I really loved her as a character. And I also was doing something really nice, which was watching the Richard Armitage adaptation at the same time as reading this. So I would read this and then watch an episode. There's 6 episodes, so I would watch as much as I could before, like I didn't want to spoil the book basically. I was reading up until that and then watching that. So that was a really fun thing and something that I've done a little bit more this year. I've also done the same with the Slow Horses series. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. And I think potentially this will be something I return to, and indeed the series, because the series was great. Somebody told me, but I haven't been able to find it, that Richard Armitage actually narrates a audiobook version of this. But I haven't been able to find it anywhere. I don't know. And also, I remember when that wonderful programme, which has now been discontinued, the Sarah Cox book programme called Between the Covers, Richard Armitage was a guest on there and they had to talk about their favourite book, and he talked about North and South. I mean, imagine your favourite book being North and South and then being cast as the main character in it. Like, what a treat. But yeah, this was really readable and I very much enjoyed it. We had a great time reading it for Patreon Book Club, and we've recently just had our last Christmas episode of Patreon Book Club and we were talking about our favourite book that we read that year. The winner was Frankie by Graham Norton, but quite a few people said this was their favourite as well, and this was indeed my favourite. So yeah, a great time had by all. Next up, so we're in the top 3 now. That's exciting, isn't it? I think these two, 3 and 2, are interchangeable. But number 3 is Shy Creatures by Claire Chambers, which is a book I have read twice this year. I loved it so much. It was the first book I read at the beginning of the year, and the thrill of the first book of the year being 5 stars is a real treat. Like, I really feel like it set my reading up for great things when the first book that I've read of the year was a 5-star book. I had a really great time reading this. And then I'm part of a book club in my local library, and this book came up again, I think maybe in September, and I thought, good, I can read it again this year. And I listened to the audiobook of it, so I've read it and listened to the audiobook of it both this year, and had a brilliant time. It opens with a woman working in a sort of mental institute as an art therapist, and she is having an affair with one of the psychologists there. And I was very invested in this whole storyline because Claire Chambers writes amazing characters. And then an event happens where you get into the actual what the book is about, and the book is about a man who has been found and has been living a sort of reclusive life, a very reclusive life, kept indoors by his 3 elderly aunts, and his hair has grown completely long, and he's a grown man. However, his mind functions in that way of a child, as his aunts have always treated him like a child. And he is found and brought to this institute and is looked after there by indeed our main character, who is an art therapist, who finds out about his talents with art, and we find out gradually about his life, and we're also finding out about her life and the affair she's having and the surrounding characters in that. It is told in a way that I bloody love. It's told backwards. So I really appreciated that as a narrative device, and it just makes the whole book seem so special. And as you're finding out what's happening, it feels really, it's an amazing way to be able to inform people of what's happening in the present by telling you about the past. Like, very clever. The last chapter ends on this beautiful golden holiday that they're talking about, that the chap who has been living this sort of reclusive life, and he's talking about this golden holiday he had with a school friend and their family when they were younger. And it just evoked such feelings of me remembering golden holidays that I'd had, in particular a longboat holiday that I'd had with my parents and my sister and some family friends and their 2 kids. And it just really hammered home sort of the importance of memories for me as well. And I thought that when I read it the first time round, but when I read it the second time round, I was like, yeah, this is just a wonderful, warm piece of writing, this last chapter. The last chapter, in fact, I would like to read the last chapter in isolation and see if I still feel the same about it. But yeah, it's an amazing piece of work. I've just bought it as a Christmas present for my best friend's mother and would urge other people to read it. So yeah, twice in 1 year if you like me. But yeah, really great. Then number 2 is Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell. I listened to the audiobook of this, narrated by Louisa Harland. An amazing audio book job done here. This was on the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction. It didn't make the shortlist, which is insane to me. But I will say what I did when I talked about this when we were talking about books halfway through the year. I have never felt so concerned and involved in the lives of characters as I think I've ever done in this book ever. Like, I was thinking about the woman, Kira, and her three children as the book goes on, and worrying about them, and unless I was reading it and hearing what was happening, I was thinking about them. And I still think about them to this day. You're following Kira, who is in an abusive relationship with her husband. It's a mentally abusive relationship, and she is frightened of him. He hasn't abused her physically in any way, but she is living a life where she is in fear of her husband. And she, on a snap decision, decides to take her two daughters away from the family home and go into sort of sheltered accommodation. And this sheltered accommodation, because of the housing crisis in Dublin at the time, is in a hotel. And she's living with her daughters in this room, which they're not allowed any personal effects or anything that's sort of going to make their lives comfortable. They have to sort of sneak in rice cookers and stuff like this in order to be able to cook themselves meals, otherwise they're living off of crappy fast food and things like this. And all the time this is happening, she's thinking, oh God, I'm putting my children through this. Would it be better if they were at home in their beds with their toys? And was it as bad as I remember? Was the abuse as bad as I remember? Could I put up with it? So then might I haven't upheaved all my children to live in this hotel room and things like that. And like I said, I was just so attached to these characters and hearing the decisions that Kira was making, and I just felt like I wanted to pick up the phone and ring her and talk to her. Like, I just felt so attached to them. And I've heard a lot of people say that as well. So an amazing job done by Roisin O'Donnell. I must read more by her. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. I've got a hair stuck to my lipstick. But yeah, amazing. Now, the number one book. I haven't made a secret of this. I've been talking about this, and I read this early on, and I think I sort of knew then that this was going to be my best book of the year. And in recent times I've been saying, well, my best book of the year was, and that is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, which is translated from the French by Ros Schwartz. I found out after I read this, in fact, maybe a couple of months after I read this, that this was written in the 90s. It feels so modern. I couldn't believe it was written in the 90s. So if I can tell you about the plot, rather than the vibes, because I think the plot really adds to the vibes. You are following a woman called The Child, who is living in seemingly a sort of underground dungeon as one of 40 women who are overseen by these guards who have these whips, and they're living in this cage and they're not allowed to touch one another. And they're living this life, and to begin with she's counting the days and working out how long they've been in here and things like that. And on one day an alarm goes off while the 40 women are being fed, and the guards just evacuate immediately, run away, and they leave the gate open. So these 40 women are able to escape, and they are indeed being kept underground, and they go up to the top of where they are, and for miles and miles and miles they cannot see a thing. It's barren. There's nothing. No people, houses, nothing. And then from that point on, you are following their journey of survival, and absolutely no resolution given in this book. You're following their journey of survival and how they live together as a community, and their discoveries, and the discoveries of things around, and also the discoveries of what they are able to do. And yeah, and in the same way that I mentioned that sort of thrilling monotony when I was talking about on the calculation of volume 1 earlier, this was unbelievable, like how their days were basically the same. And as it went on longer, I was thinking there's got to be no resolution here, but I just couldn't stop turning the pages. I read it in 24 hours in the same way that I read on the calculation of volume 1 so quickly. Amazing, amazing work. Bleak, but hopeful and mysterious, but yet everything's laid out for you. Like there's no resolution. I just loved it. I think it might be stories of survival and day-to-day routines that I really, really love. So if you have read I Who Have Never Known Men, and indeed on the calculation of volume 1, and have thought, oh, I know a book that's similar to that, because as I was reading on the calculation of volume 1, I was thinking, oh, this does feel similar to I Who Have Never Known Men. I would love to know your recommendations, because yeah, 2 books that feel very similar and I've loved this year. But I Who Have Never Known Men, it's a real mouthful to say as well, isn't it? I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I've got Orlando, her newer book, Jacqueline Hartman's newer book, out from the library, and I've been telling myself to read it because I loved I Who Have Never Known Men so much. But I've been so nervous to read it because I had such a great time with that. I don't want to go in. And I think maybe I went in not having any expectations to I Who Have Never Known Men. Wish there was a shorter way I could say that. But yeah, it's been a great reading year. I've had an amazing reading year. At this point, I have read 180 books, which is insane and not something I will be repeating next year. But yeah, there has been some great books. And like I said, starting off with Shy Creatures at the beginning of the year, 5 stars straight away, and then having an amazing January and February. It has been wonderful. So yes, please, please, please do let me know down below your best book of the year. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know if any of these have sort of skyrocketed up your TBR. Would be very, very interested. And yes, Happy New Year to everybody. Looking forward to 2026. Lots of plans. You may have seen less videos. We're just uploading on a Sunday now, apart from today. And yeah, I will see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Goodbye.